Okay, Alex, Steve, thank you very much for talking to me. I'm going to talk about the Beatles, and obviously the first thing I guess I need to ask you don't have to be completely exact, or maybe you want to be, but just when you were actually born, in terms of where I could put the Beatles' history, you know.
I was born in 1985.
85.
I was born in 88.
Yeah, there you go. 88. Jesus Christ. Okay, so we're talking, you know, decades almost after the Beatles.
Yeah.
Split. So what is your knowledge, memory, thoughts about the Beatles? You know, what do they mean in your imagination?
I think for me, I guess, for a lot of kind of kids growing up in England around that time, we got into the Beatles through our parents, and you know, my earliest memories, I think, was when the anthology the Beatles anthology came out. Well, my earliest Beatles memory anyway. And there was a video for Eleanor Rigby that went with it, and I remember it just scaring the life out of me because it was this really kind of dark song, really dark string arrangements, and then just this video with all these gravestones and stuff like that. And it's just my aunt was a huge Beatles fan, and she had all the old Sgt. Pepper on vinyl and things like that, and that's what really, I guess that was my first taste of pop music, really.
It was really,
yeah, certainly.
I grew up in Denmark, and the Beatles aren't, well, as big part of the culture as it is in England, I suppose. But I mean, obviously everybody knows the Beatles, but I didn't grow up in a particularly musical family because I grew up with my mother. But I think the amazing thing about the Beatles is that even when you then first are told, this is the Beatles, have a listen to this, you actually already know most of the songs.
Yeah. You know, we talk about them in a way of being like almost the original boy band, as much as we talk about them inventing, you know, psychedelic folk rock, and almost every genre they sort of hinted at, anticipated, or indeed defined, at the same time as they're being screamed at and they're being put on lunchboxes. And in a way, it's still a formula that I guess is the ultimate goal for a kind of new young band, you know, to be sonically and interesting with their records and create this incredible hysteria in their fans.
That gave them the platform, I think, to be able to. The kind of success they had with those early pop songs and playing to thousands of screaming girls, that enabled them to then go on and have, I guess, the budget and the ability to say to the record label that we're going to go down this avenue because we can, and they have this kind of fan base.
Someone wrote a review about us and wrote of it as a negative thing that we had girls screaming at the front of the stage.
Yeah,
and I don't get it, because the band, but one of the bands whose success we all aspire to reach, was well, that's what they had. You know?
In a way, do you think, in an abstract sort of way, you go into being a pop group, the way you represent yourself to people, the way you sound, in a way that's not unlike how the Beatles have begun, with a lot of hunger, a lot of kind of questioning about things. You know, for you, it's not changed. It's still the same reason to do something.
Totally, and I think the way, you know, they were kind of influenced, not just the Beatles, but the bands at that time, like the Stones and stuff, influenced by American R&B, and I think that's what inspired us to pick up our instruments and form a band, because of these influences that have gone before. So there's definitely a
which is like we've talked about before. You know, people that today can say that they saw the Rolling Stones or the Beatles in a tiny little club in Manchester or wherever in England, you know, before they actually took over the world. I think that must be amazing. And I suppose another dream is to one day hear that from someone, that they've seen us in a little club.
Totally.
Back in the day, in 2009.
Yeah.
You know, if someone tells their children that in 20 years, that'd be incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I've had my, you know, an ambiguous relationship with the Beatles in a way, but there's no doubt you can't deny that they were constantly looking to be surprising. You know, in a world that was becoming increasingly formulaic. You know. Yeah,
I think to be a true great, you have to surprise people. The Beatles didn't want to be another Beatles. They wanted to be a different band from then on. That's why Sgt. Pepper sounds completely different to Rubber Soul, and Rubber Soul sounds different to Hard Day's Nights, because they want to evolve and test themselves. And it's obviously quite arrogant in a way, but I think you have to be to be able to do that. You have to test yourself and not worry about what what might come out and what other people are going to think.
Do you see a possibility, and would you love the idea that there could be some kind of equivalent in the next few years of the extraordinary things that happened in the 60s that the Beatles both sort of triggered and reflected, and the unbelievable impact it would have on your lifestyle and what it would do to you, and the psychedelic mess it would make of your head, and the whole thing that it would throw you into, that it's not just in a way about music, but it's about everything else that can come with it. Yeah.
Imagine being able to just travel the world doing what you love the most, you know, whether it's going away to India to find inspiration, or if we decide to go in a tiny country in Africa and set up a studio one day, you know, just because the possibilities, if you get to that point, are just endless.
So they're still there, you think? Well, there's still equivalent possibilities that.
Well, you will always be doing something that someone has already done. I think trying to create something completely new and completely original, something that people will go, wow, I've never ever heard anything like it. I think it's pretty much impossible. I don't know if that's too big a statement, but almost, at least.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it kind of, you know, every decade has seemed to have had this kind of, not revolution, but, you know, in the 90s you had Britpop, and then in the 80s where you had kind of a number of things, and New Romantics, and then in the 70s you had like glam punk. There hasn't really been something like that in the last sort of 10 years. There's been, you know, at the moment there seems to be this kind of emphasis on girls and synthesizers and stuff like that, and I don't know if there's been nothing powerful enough to kind of drive. You know how like everyone would be looking the same, like in the Britpop era, everyone wanted to look like Liam and Noel, and there's nothing like that at the moment. So I guess.
What's your reading of why that is? That even though everything in life seems to be speeding up, the changes in music seem to be oddly getting slower. And
we seem to keep on coming back.
Yeah, coming back to the.
Well, it's the same as with fashion, you know. People run out of ideas almost. Or it's just, you know, it's retro.
I find bands like the Arctic Monkeys having tremendous trouble doing the same kind of evolving as the Beatles, because, you know, it's such different times. But, you know, would you like it that by the time you do get to your third or fourth album, in terms of what you sound like, we wouldn't really recognise you from your first album, as kind of happened with the Beatles? Is it possible still to do that with all the commercial and social and cultural kind of restrictions that there now are?
I think that'd be incredible if you at least have the option to, you know. I mean, if 4 albums down the line, I would hate it if we sounded exactly the same as we do now, because 4 years down the line, well, I hope that I've seen
we'll have
seen a
different
lot
things to talk
compared
about
to what's from now.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll be a lot smarter and not just write about the things I write about now, which is, I mean, what I write about now, there's nothing wrong for a 21-year-old to be writing about that, but I don't want to be writing about it at 25.
If you did a Beatles song, what would you think you would be doing?
So there's so. I mean, we were actually talking about back in the USSR a few months back. I think. Well, maybe that was me and Luke talking about that. Sorry, but I can't pick just one. I mean, I would really like to do Back in the USSR, because it's one of those songs that it can still come on in a club and people go mental.
Yeah, I think Got to Get You Into My Life as well would be a good one.
That's what we were actually talking about.
Because that's got the big Motown influence on it, and you know we love Motown as well. So I think for your voice that would sound great doing that song. And there's just so many, isn't there? I think it would definitely be kind of mid to later Beatles that we do.
I'd love to do Eleanor Rigby as well. It's just such a stunning song.
I heard a death metal band covered that
really
a few years back. Yeah, it wasn't very good.
I can imagine.
The one that scared you?
Yeah, that was it, yeah. Death metal got me into the Beatles.
Fear.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex, thank you ever so much, man.
Thanks
a lot, thank you.